all experienced what a strong storm is like. Sometimes you wonder if it will ever end, and other times you wonder if you will survive it. In the first century, Jesus had spoken many parables to the people, and he and his disciples got into a boat. And we read about this in Mark 4 and verse 35. On the same day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us cross over to the other side." Now when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was. And other little boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling. But he was in the stern asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" Then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" And they feared exceedingly, and said to one another, "Who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him?" It is bad enough when you have to go through a strong storm in your house, but it certainly takes it up a notch when the storm is happening out in the water in a boat that is not designed for such. Imagine the chaos on that boat as the waves began to overwhelm it and pour into the boat. I can just see these disciples grabbing anything they can to keep from being knocked out of the boat, and also trying to get the water out of the boat as well. Most likely it was dark outside by now, which adds to the terror. But Jesus had no problem sleeping through this terrible storm. Had his disciples not disturbed him, he might not have woken up until the next day. Once Jesus is awake, he gets up and he rebukes the wind and says, "Peace, be still." Of course, the wind obeys and the water became calm. His disciples could hardly believe what he was able to do, but they learned that night that their faith was not where it needed to be. There are many storms that are going to happen in our lifetimes. And I'm not talking about storms dealing with weather, but with situations in our lives that can be just as overwhelming as being on that boat that night. Sometimes we feel like the waves of life are filling us up and are about to cause us to sink. But we must never forget who we belong to and how powerful our God is. No matter how big or how long the storms of life may be, we can rest assured that God will be our anchor and we can trust in him. If those disciples that night had the faith that they needed in God, and it was where they needed it to be, then they would not have allowed fear to overcome them. We must make our goal to always remember how God is in our lives and how he can deliver us and give us true peace from the storms in our lives. Let us never forget what Paul wrote in Romans 14, verse number 8. "For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and rose and lived again, that he might be Lord of both the dead and the living." So never stop trusting in God, especially during the storms of our lives, because our faith in him will give us the greatest peace that can ever be found.